So my Facebook page is out of hand with loves, likes, and shares, good stories, good music, all because the legendary Bob Weir passed away the other day. And man, I'm going to try to not be emotional in this video. I've been crying for 2 days straight, and some of the most beautiful cries I've ever had in my life. And you know, I can't help but maybe think Bob ascending when he did is a blessing for the world. You know, we're in some pretty difficult times politically, and just the human experience and the amount of division in the world. And I don't want to dive into that, but man, Bob and the Grateful Dead and the fans are just completely the opposite of that. They're just all about love and connection and music and things that will endure for so long. And I need to try to get away from all these dogs over here. I'm on a walk with my son Teddy, and yeah, give me a quick second. Get away. So anyways, I'm back, and it's just been nice to have my feed just full of wonderful people, mostly people I don't know, but despite them being strangers, they all feel like family. And that was actually one of the posts that's gone kind of semi-viral, shared, I don't know, 500 times or something. I mentioned that when you go to a Grateful Dead show, a Dead and Company show, or any version or cover band, anything Grateful Dead related, that when you go to a show, you don't necessarily need to go with friends because you got hundreds or thousands of friends in attendance automatically. It's kind of built into the experience. And my experience with the Dead is one that, you know, started later in life. I never got to see Jerry. I remember the day he died. I was in Portland, Oregon. A lot of sad people, but I didn't get it. You know, I wasn't on the train just yet. And, you know, it's a lot different now when Bob passed because we have the internet. So we can all collectively share our stories and share how much he meant to us and play clips. And, you know, Jerry didn't really get that. But it's just nice to know too that like this music and this band and this community is going to live on for so long, so incredibly long. Like it's definitely not going to fade away. And that's awesome. I don't know that you can really say that about many things in life. And I started listening to the Dead while I was working construction with my buddy Randy. He would always play it, and it wasn't really my cup of tea at the time, but after you hear Ripple 6 or 7 times, it's hard to not start liking it and start singing it and getting into that groove. And so I did, but I never saw a show. And then I moved to Maui for like 10 years, and you don't get those kind of shows in Maui very often. Yeah, see some cover bands, do some shows, but I remember when I left Maui and I landed in Los Angeles on the way to move to Tennessee, Dead and Company was starting up their tour, and the first show was in Dodger Stadium, I got tickets to that, took my wife to the show. She's not a Deadhead. She's just not her thing. She's not really a huge live music person. And the show was cool, but it wasn't anything magical. But it was still cool. I remember I went out right after the show and bought a John Mayer signature PRS Silver Sky guitar right after the show. The same one that he played in that show, except for mine had the maple fretboard instead of the rosewood. And loved that guitar. But I didn't see them next until July 7th, 2023. And my mom's birthday is on July 8th, the very next day. So I flew to Seattle, jumped in a car, flew from Nashville, Tennessee to Seattle. The plan was to rent a car, drive to the Gorge, see them for the show on the 7th, which was a huge fiasco, like the most insane travel day with all kinds of hiccups with the plane, the rental car place. By the time I got to the Gorge, there was a line for miles to even get the cars situated. And I walked into the Gorge Amphitheater, and they started playing Tennessee Jed. So it was kind of perfect. And the main reason I was there is because I was going to surprise my mom for her birthday, July 8th, the next day. She had no idea I'd come to town. And because I had been living all across the country for 20 years, I didn't get to see her all that often. Every other year or so. Sometimes there were longer stretches. So I thought it'd be a wonderful birthday surprise to just show up on my mom's birthday. And it was. And I was worried I was going to give her a heart attack because, she had been struggling with heart issues and some health issues for like 10 years, long time. And so I was always kind of prepared for her to pass. There were many times where I thought she was going to. So every time I would see her, it would be in my mind that this could be the last time. So I would make sure to cherish those moments and say anything that I ever wanted to say, so nothing was ever left unsaid. And so there was a lot of magic in that 2003 show at the Gorge for me. Got to see my mom. That was great. And then a year goes by. I was able to actually catch Bob and Wolf Bros at the Ryman Theater. That was my very first Ryman show. If you don't know what the Ryman Auditorium is, go down a rabbit hole because it's maybe the coolest venue in all of the country. And that was really special too. And then I think it was like the next year, 2024, the Sphere. I caught 3 Dead Company shows right before my mom's birthday again. So my plan was to be in the Sphere for 3 shows, then fly to Oregon, see my mom on her birthday, July 8th. And I went to the first 2 Sphere shows, and I mean, it's unreal, right? If you haven't been, sorry you missed it. Maybe Mayer will bring it back with some special guests to cover Bob's spots, but who knows if we'll ever see that again. But it was amazing, unbelievably amazing. And then the third night was like life-changing for me. ate a few too many mushrooms that night. And the guy sitting right next to me was like 76 years old. And I think he flew in from New Jersey. He hadn't seen the Dead since the 80s with Jerry. And he dropped a bunch of acid. And watching him watch the show was a show in itself. I mean, this dude was on the ride of his life. And the camaraderie with the crowd was epic. And I can't remember if this was the second or third night. So much of it was a blur because I was in another world. Yeah, I think it had to have been the third night. But my phone was buzzing over and over again, just blowing up. And I was afraid to look at it because I was in such this altered state, and I didn't want any like real world news coming into my wonderful trip. But I sensed, because of the amount of buzzing my phone was having, that maybe something was wrong with my mom. And I'm trying not to cry here. Then when this was happening, the song Uncle John's Band was playing, and there was like the visuals on the sphere screen was all these like paint by numbers, like super bright, colorful, beautiful, like happy vibe going on. And then there's the one lyric in the song where he says, he's come to take his children home. And right in that moment, I knew that my mom was passing away. And it just leveled me. And I was in just instant tears. And instantly, like, they were beautiful tears, though. It was like, it wasn't a shock because it's something we were expecting to happen for a long time. And it ended up becoming like this beautiful experience of being able to say goodbye. And then the very next song, they were playing Morning Dew. And even though the meaning of that song is kind of trippy and harsh and more about death than life, you know, there was the lyric said, like, I heard a baby cry. And in that moment, I saw Teddy, who's sitting right below this camera right now, sleeping away as I walk in. I saw him being born. And he looked just like him too. It was so like real, like my mom leaving and then Teddy coming in. And I always wanted a baby, but I just, being 50 years old and adopting 2 other kids and knowing how much work it is, just didn't feel like I had it in me. But in that moment, I knew without a shadow of a doubt. And so I was like, right away, I was like, I'm going to call him Dewey. And Lindsay did not like that name. And I'll tell you how Teddy came about. So it was interesting. So right after the last note of the show ends, my phone buzzes again. It's my dad, and he's saying, hey, your mom is in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. You need to get here. And sorry for the long spiel here, but I don't expect anybody to watch it unless you really care about my personal life. Might be a couple of you. So I left the sphere still in a very altered state, and I was walking through the Encore casino in Vegas, and I bumped into a guy, and I turned around and said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And the guy turned around, and it was Theo Vaughn, the comedian. I was like, "Oh, wow." The first thing out of my mouth was, "Dude, thank you so much for your podcast with Ernest and Jelly Roll." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, both those guys, were getting so irie outside, super high, obviously smoking herb. And I was like, and you being in recovery, and I was like, and sharing your experience with recovery, I was like, I just always appreciate that, man. And I think it's really cool. But while watching your podcast with those guys, I was like, you were having just as much fun with them as they were obviously really lifted, and you weren't. But something about that moment made me feel like, maybe you don't need any substances to achieve this wonderful high. And he really appreciated that. And so we started walking and talking, and his buddy Amir K, like another super funny stand-up comedian. I seen him a bunch in LA at the Comedy Store. Super funny. We walked for like 15 minutes through the hotel and just were talking, and I told him about the Dead Show and me being in the altar, and I told him about my mom too, and he was just like, "Whoa, man." And he was really gracious and really funny. And so I fly to Portland like the next day to go see my mom, and thankfully she held on, and she was still in a really coherent state for like 2 days. We were able to celebrate her birthday together, crack jokes, tell her how much I loved her, and then the pain started getting really, really immense for her. And I told the doctor, like, you gotta crank the meds to max level, make her comfortable, which they thankfully did. But that also made it so she was unable to really talk or communicate. And then they were setting her up for hospice at home for my dad to take care of her. And I was like, man, my dad's in no shape mentally to have to take care of her like this. He'd been taking care of her for years, and to know that the end was near, like, I just couldn't imagine my dad having to do that. And so I had to fly out back to Tennessee the next morning, and I went down to the hospital and pulled up a cot and slept with my mom by her side. She still couldn't talk, and I told her I loved her, and thanked her for always supporting all my silly ideas and always letting me do whatever I wanted to do, even when it didn't coincide with what she thought I should do. She was always the biggest cheerleader I ever had, and it was the best gift she could have ever given me, to not try to overparent me and trust in my own decisions. And I thanked her for that. Thanked her for being such a great mom and giving me the life that she had. And I also told her that, Dad was struggling, and that if she wanted to let go, now might be a good time. And like 3 minutes later, she passed away right in front of me. And it was crazy. And as sad as it was, I don't know that it could have happened in a better way. And for her to welcome me into this world, and then me being there when she left. And so the next morning I flew back to Tennessee. I told Lindsay that I was ready to have a baby. And I want to say magically, but I think more maybe divinely, it worked first try. And it worked. She was pregnant. And so as we were trying to come up with names, we couldn't agree on really any names. And here comes a big truck. The only name that her and we were also taking in Kaylee's suggestions too. It was important for me that his sister liked the name. The only name that all of us liked was Theodore, which is really cool. Theodore Jackson. Theodore Jackson. And so it's a great name if you want to be a president or a blues musician, which I would obviously prefer the latter. But with Theodore, you've got Teddy, you've got Theo, you've got TJ for TJ, Theodore Jackson. And we all decided on Theodore. I usually call him Teddy or Theo. And then it hit me. I was like, wow. I was kicking it with Theo Vaughn not but minutes after I saw him in my vision inside the sphere of being born. And I thought it was really cool how it turned out that way. And so, because of that experience, the Grateful Dead meant more than anything ever to me. Symbol of like my mom passing on and Theo being born. And man, it was just a part of me. And every time I would hear that music, just would do something to me and take me to a different place. And being around the people in the crowd, I remember in the sphere too, there was this one woman who had this like LED light with a little cape. It looked like a little angel down on the floor. She's one of the twirlers dancing down in the pit. And my mom's name is Angela. And she loved little angel charms and bells. And seeing that woman dance and twirl in that little angel outfit, it felt like my mom sending me a message. And it was just wild, all the little things that just let me know that like everything was gonna be all right, better than all right. And that life and death are this one beautiful thing. And it's interesting, when Bob passed, for the last 2 days, I've seen just nothing but immense love on social media. I mean, an insane amount of just community vibes, and it's really, really thankful for that. And it's really thankful for Bob really sharing a lot of his workouts and his reels on social media too. See an old guy getting after that and prioritizing his fitness is something really, really cool, and really encouraged me. And my business partner Jimmy has played with Bob quite a few times. They're both from Mill Valley, and he messaged me and he said, Bob was the very first guy who really showed up and donated his time and money and guitars to the Blue Star Music Camp, which was music camp for kids. And he said, I said him and Bonnie Raitt were the very first ones to show up. And he always appreciated that. And you hear all these stories from people all on social media right now, and there's just so many hundreds of these stories of Bob's generosity and the little things that he would do, not for recognition, not for anything other than just being the dude he was. And so I'm really happy to keep getting healthy and spend the next year, heck, the next 50 years listening to Grateful Dead music, playing Grateful Dead music, sharing it, and living it, really trying to be that person who is like the kind of people who are showing up on my social media feed right now. Just embracing and loving and forgiving. And I got a lot of thanks for Bob. And a lot of thanks for the entire community. I'm thankful that it's not going to end. I don't think it ever can end. I think one of the reasons one of my posts has gone kind of semi-viral is because I said the Grateful Dead is the most influential band in the entire world. They've affected more lives and people than anyone at any time with their music. No band has done it. Obviously you got the Beatles and the Stones and Michael Jackson, but none of them have people living in parking lots and hitchhiking across the country to go to show after show after show and getting tattoos and wearing the clothes and doing podcasts 50 years later talking about a particular guitar riff that took place in Philadelphia in 1980. I mean, it's wild what this community has built together. And it really is a community, because Grateful Dead would not exist the way they do without the fans and community. And I'm just super thankful and grateful to be a part of that. Even though I didn't get to see Jerry, even though I may not have dreadlocks and don't smell like patchouli, I'm super grateful to be a part of this community.